Listen, it all started with a text message. For real. Not even a full sentence. Just a string of words on my phone screen that lit up my whole world and burned it down at the same damn time. If I ain't look at my phone at that exact second on that specific day, I swear none of this would have ever happened. I'd probably still be in that same fog, paying for a life that wasn't even mine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You asked what happened, so let me take you all the way back to the beginning of the end. For 5 years, my life was built on a foundation of love, and I see it now, a whole lot of lies. I was a partner at a big architecture firm downtown Atlanta. Making good money, you know. Had my own spot, a cute little condo in Midtown with a view that made the grind feel worth it. I was 33. Life was looking up. Then I got the call. It was my mama, Brenda, and she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. All I could make out was my daddy, Robert, his heart, the doctors, and the words were gonna lose everything. My blood went cold. My daddy, my hero, the one who taught me how to draw a straight line, was sick. A bad heart, she said. The stress of maybe losing their house was going to be the end of him, and just like that, I was on I-85 South, heading back to the suburbs. I thought I had escaped. When I got there, it was a whole production. My daddy was laid up on the couch, looking pale, clutching his chest. My mama was fluttering around him with a glass of water and a worried look. And my little sister Tiffany, who was 24 at the time, was sitting in the corner scrolling on her iPhone, looking bored, but like tragically bored. They laid it all out for me. The mortgage was behind, the bills were piling up, and the doctor said my daddy needed a stress-free environment. The implication was heavy, you feel me? The stress was financial, and I was the solution. I ain't even hesitate. What was I supposed to do, let my daddy die over a mortgage? So I did what any loving daughter would do. I liquidated. I sold my condo, my dream spot, and took every last dime from my saving. I walked into their bank, paid off the arrears, and then did something that felt smart at the time but was the dumbest move of my life. I bought the house from them. The lawyer, Mr. Henderson, a guy my dad knew, called it a formality, a way to protect the asset. We put the house, the whole property, the deed, everything 100% in my name. Shonda L. Williams. They said it was just on paper so I could manage the payments easier. And I believed them. I moved back into my old childhood bedroom, a room that suddenly felt way too small, and started paying for everything. The first year, it made sense. My dad was recovering. He couldn't work his construction job no more, he said. So I paid the mortgage. Then the lights, the water, the cable bill, cause he needed his shows to relax. Then Tiffany's car note started bouncing, and my mama would come to me all quiet and sad, talking about how Tiffany was so stressed and we couldn't put that on her daddy. So I picked up her car note. Then it was her phone bill. Then she needed money for her cosmetology classes, which she dropped out of after 2 months. My paycheck from the firm, which used to go to savings and investments and maybe a nice vacation, started draining into a black hole I called my family. It was a direct deposit from my Chase account to theirs. My boy Marcus, who I'd been seeing for about a year at that point, he tried to tell me. We'd be sitting in his car after a date and he'd look at me and say, "Shonda, baby, I love your heart." But they ain't being helped. They being enabled. You're not a daughter. You're a walking, talking ATM. I would get so defensive. You don't understand, I'd tell him. It's my family. My daddy's sick. And he would just shake his head real slow and say, "Is he though? He looks fine when he's yelling at the Falcons game." I hated when he said that, because a little part of me knew he was right. But that guilt, Chile, that guilt was a coat that was 2 sizes too heavy, and I couldn't figure out how to take it off. I was the successful one, the architect. It's my duty. That's what they made me feel anyway. So 5 years went by like that. 5 years of me working 60-hour weeks, designing luxury hotels and corporate headquarters for other people, just to come home to my childhood bedroom and get a list of new expenses. Tiffany was now 29, never had a real job, but always had a fresh set of nails and the latest iPhone. My parents were living a retired life on a 38-year-old salary. My salary. They treated me less like a daughter and more like a tenant with benefits. A tenant who paid all the bills. They'd have family over for cookouts, and my dad would stand by the grill, talking loud about his house, his yard. And I'd just stand there, smiling, feeling like a ghost in my own life. A ghost who was funding the whole damn party. Which brings me to my 38th birthday. I wasn't expecting a big deal, I never got one. But I guess I was hoping for something. A card, a cake from Walmart, a happy birthday daughter text. I woke up that morning and my phone was quiet. I got ready for work, feeling that familiar little ache in my chest. I drove to the office, sat through 3 meetings, and around noon, my phone finally buzzed. It was from my dad. My heart did a little jump, and then I read it. There was no happy birthday, no nothing. Just Tiffany and Devin need a down payment for their new house. We figured you could sell your old condo, send the money by Friday. I stared at that text for so long, the screen went black. My old condo, the one asset I had kept for myself. It was a rental property now, my one little piece of financial independence, my nest egg. And they weren't asking, they were telling. I felt something inside me that I ain't felt in 5 years. It wasn't sadness, it was cold. I texted back one word, no. My phone immediately started ringing. It was my daddy. I answered. I ain't even get a word out before he started yelling. What you mean, nah? After everything we done for you? Ungrateful. Tiffany needs this. She's your sister. I just listened, my hand steady on my desk. And I said, my voice real quiet, no, I'm not selling it. There was a pause, and then he said the words that changed everything. The words that finally woke me up. He said, fine. You want to be selfish? Then you can get your stuff and get out of my house. And he hung up. I sat there in the silence of my office, and a slow, tired smile spread across my face. Because in that one sentence, he ain't have no idea what he had just done. He hadn't just kicked me out. He had set me free. And he had just handed me the keys to my own life. A life I had forgotten I even owned. I ain't yell, I ain't cry, I ain't. I swear something inside me just clicked. It was like a switch flipped. All that guilt, all that obligation that had been weighing me down for 5 long years, it just evaporated. I packed up my briefcase, told my assistant I was taking a personal afternoon and drove. But I didn't drive home, nah. I drove straight downtown to the Westin, walked up to the front desk and booked a suite for a week. I needed space, I needed quiet. I walked into that clean, empty room with the big window overlooking the city, dropped my bags, and just stood there for a minute breathing. It was the first time in 5 years I felt like I could actually breathe. That first night, I ain't do nothing but sit in the quiet and let the anger come. It wasn't hot, fiery anger. It was cold. It was a deep, settled thing that made me feel steady. You feel me? I thought about my grandma Eleanor. She passed before all this mess started, but I could hear her voice clear as day. She always used to tell me, Shonda, your heart is kind, but don't you ever forget that your spine is made of steel. Don't you let nobody mistake your kindness for weakness. And I'm sitting there in that fancy hotel room thinking, Grandma, I let him for 5 years, I let him. But not no more. The pity party was over. It was time to get to work. The next morning, I woke up with the sun, ordered room service, the expensive kind with the fresh orange juice and everything because I deserved it. And I made 2 calls. The first one was to my financial advisor. The second one was to my lawyer, Mr. Franklin. Not the family lawyer my daddy knew, but my lawyer. The one who helped me set up my LLC for my rental property. A sharp brother, no nonsense. I told him everything, the whole 5-year story. He was quiet the whole time, just listening. When I was done, all he said was, Shonda, do you have the deed to the property? I told him, yeah, the original copy was in a safe deposit box at the bank. He said, good. Do you have records of the payments you've been making? I told him I had 5 years of Chase bank statements that would show every single mortgage payment, every utility bill, every dollar transferred, all coming from my account. He took a deep breath and said, "Well, it sounds to me like you've been a very generous landlord. And now it's time to deal with your tenants." He told me to come to his office the next day and to bring everything. So that's what I did. I spent the rest of that day on a mission. I went to the bank and got a notarized copy of the deed. I logged into my online banking and downloaded 60 months of statements. 60. And for the first time, I made myself look at the numbers. I opened up a new Excel spreadsheet on my MacBook and started typing. The mortgage, $2,250 a month, times 60 months. The utilities, averaging about $400 a month. The property taxes, twice a year. Tiffany's car note, $350 a month for 4 years. The emergency money for her nails, her hair, her random shopping sprees. The money for my parents' anniversary trip to the Bahamas. The new roof on the house 2 years ago, that was $12,000 right there. I just kept typing, line after line. The numbers on the screen kept getting bigger and bigger, and I felt sick to my stomach. By the time I was done, the total at the bottom of the screen read $357,821.46. I had spent over $250,000 keeping them comfortable while they treated me like dirt. Seeing that number in black and white, it killed any last little bit of doubt I had. The next day, I walked into Mr. Franklin's office with a thick folder. I was dressed in one of my best work suits, a sharp navy blue one. I felt like I was putting on armor. I laid everything out on his big mahogany desk. The deed, the bank statements, the spreadsheet. He looked through it all, nodding slowly. He didn't say much, just ums and ahs. Finally, he leaned back in his big leather chair and looked at me over his glasses. "Shonda," he said, "they ain't got a legal leg to stand on. The house is yours free and clear. The money you gave them, that's harder to get back without a contract. But as for the house, they are, in the eyes of the law, tenants in a property they do not own." He told me the plan. We were going to draw up official eviction papers, but first we were going to give them a chance to understand the reality of their situation. He said, let them think they're winning. Let them get loud. People who get loud and reckless, they always overplay their hand, and I'm telling you, that was the best advice I ever got. So, here's the best part. I paid for a professional courier service. I gave them a copy of the deed, not the original, of course, and that beautiful, terrifying spreadsheet. I told the courier I wanted it delivered to the house at 8 a.m. sharp the next morning and to make sure someone signed for it. I went back to my hotel and I waited. My phone, which I had put on Do Not Disturb, started lighting up right at 8:05 a.m. First, it was Tiffany, a string of texts full of question marks and angry emojis. Then, I'm my mama. She left a 2-minute voicemail, crying, talking about how could I do this, how could I embarrass them like this. Then, the main event, my daddy. His voicemail was pure rage. He was yelling about forgeries, about how I was trying to steal his house, how he was going to get a lawyer and sue me for everything I had. It was exactly what Mr. Franklin said would happen. They were getting loud. They made their biggest mistake that afternoon. They called Mr. Franklin's office. They must have found his name on some old paperwork. They thought he was their lawyer. Mr. Franklin called me right after. He was trying not to laugh, I could tell. He said, "Shonda, your father called me, demanded I stop these fraudulent proceedings. I calmly informed him that I represent you, not him, and that all the documents were in order. He said your father called him a few names I can't repeat, and then your sister got on the phone and threatened to report him to the Bar Association." Mr. Franklin just chuckled. He said, "They're digging their own grave, Shonda. All we have to do is let them." He scheduled a formal meeting at his office for the following week. A summons was sent with the eviction notice. They were legally required to be there. The game was on, and for the first time, I felt ready to play. I spent the rest of the week just being. I went to work, I killed my presentations, I had dinner with Marcus and told him everything. And the look of pride on his face, Chile, it was better than any birthday present. He just squeezed my hand and said, "There she is. I knew she was in there. I was starting to know it, too." The day of the meeting, I walked into Mr. Franklin's conference room feeling calmer than I had any right to be. I was wearing my sharpest black suit. My hair was laid, and I felt powerful. Not angry, not sad, just solid. Like a building I had designed myself, with a foundation that couldn't be shaken. They were already there, the three of them, sitting on one side of that long, polished table. My daddy was red-faced, my mama looked like she'd been crying for a week straight, and Tiffany was on her phone, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. They didn't even look at me when I walked in. Mr. Franklin sat at the head of the table and got right down to it. He laid out the facts, nice and simple. He had the official notarized deed in the middle of the table. He had the bank records showing the wire transfer for the purchase of the home from my savings account 5 years ago. He had the 60 months of mortgage payments all drawn from my account. He spoke in that calm, lawyerly voice that leaves no room for argument. My father tried to interrupt, of course. He started blustering, talking about forgeries, about how I tricked him. He said I never would have signed anything if I knew she was going to try and steal my house. And that's when I finally spoke. I looked him dead in his eyes, my voice as calm as a frozen lake, and I said, "Daddy, nobody stole anything. I bought your house to save you from losing it, and I've been paying for it ever since." I leaned forward a little. And then I said, "Last week on my birthday, you told me to get out of your house. And I did. The problem is, you were standing in my house when you said it." The air went out of him. For the first time, I think he actually understood. He looked at my mom, then at Tiffany, but they had nothing. They just stared at the table. Mr. Franklin slid 3 copies of a document across the table. It was the official eviction notice. It gave them 30 days to vacate the premises. My mama finally broke down, full-on sobbing. She started pleading with me. "Shonda, baby, you can't do this to us. This is your family. Where will we go?" And I just looked at her and said, "I don't know, Mama. You probably should have thought about that before you treated your daughter like a walking bank account for 5 years. That was it." The meeting was over. They walked out of that office looking like they had been hit by a truck. And me? I felt light. Like I had finally put down the heaviest bag I'd ever been forced to carry. The fallout was quick and messy, but it was their mess, not mine. Tiffany, bless her heart, tried to get her fiancé, Devin, to pay for a lawyer to sue me. He was a decent guy with a good job, and I guess she thought he was her next ATM. From what I heard later from a cousin, Devin took one look at the situation, realized the kind of family he was about to marry into, and he was out. He broke off the engagement the next day. Tiffany's last desperate move backfired and cost her a whole fiancé. My mom called me one last time, a long, rambling, tearful voicemail that was half apology and half guilt trip. I listened to the whole thing, deleted it, and then I did something I should have done years ago. I blocked her number, I blocked my dad's, I blocked Tiffany's. I cut the cord. For the next 30 days, I stayed at the hotel. I arranged for movers and put all my old stuff from my childhood room into storage. On the 31st day, Mr. Franklin confirmed the house was empty. I walked back into that house for the first time, and it was silent. They left it a mess, but I ain't even care. It was my mess to clean up. The first thing I did was hire a crew to repaint every single room. I covered up the old beige walls with bright, clean colors. I threw out the old furniture and started over. I reclaimed my home room by room. Life started getting better, for real. I poured all that energy I had been wasting on them back into myself and my career. I landed the biggest project of my life, designing a new wing for a museum. And with the first bonus I got from that, I started a scholarship fund in my grandma Eleanor's name to help young women from my hometown go to college for architecture. I was turning all that bad energy into something good. About 6 months later, I was having lunch with Marcus at a little cafe downtown, and I saw her, Tiffany. She was a waitress there. Her nails weren't done, and she looked tired. She saw me, and her eyes went wide for a second. Then she just turned and rushed back into the kitchen. I ain't feel happy. I ain't feel nothing, really. It was just confirmation. The fantasy was over. Reality had finally sent them the bill. A year after that day in the lawyer's office, I was sitting on the back porch of my house, drinking a glass of wine and watching the sunset. I was at peace. I finally understood that I ain't destroyed my family. They destroyed themselves with their own greed and their own entitlement. I just stopped protecting them from the consequences. I didn't get revenge. I got my life back. And I learned that the most valuable thing you can ever own is your own self-respect. And that right there is priceless.
Thank you, Shinda, for sharing this story with us. Chile, what a journey. For 5 whole years, this woman carried her family on her back, only to have them try and kick her out of the very house she bought and paid for. Imagine that. She went from being their walking ATM to the owner of her own life. And it all turned on that one moment she finally said no. That one little word changed everything for her. Now look, there is so much wisdom to pull from what Shonda went through. The first thing, and I've been saying this for years, is you got to keep your paperwork in order. For real. Shonda was able to stand firm because her name was on that deed and she had receipts for every single dime. The mistake folks stay making is keeping things verbal, thinking love is enough to make things right. Listen, love is wonderful, but business is business. Second, don't let nobody mistake your kindness for weakness. Remember what her grandma Eleanor told her? That her spine was made of steel. Shonda had to find that steel again. If I had to break this down for somebody going through something similar, I'd say this. Setting a boundary ain't a declaration of war. It's an act of self-respect. It don't mean you love them any less. It means you finally decided to love yourself more. And the last thing, which is so important. See, her victory wasn't about revenge. It was that quiet moment on her own porch, feeling at peace. I ain't gonna lie, that right there is the goal. A rule to remember is simple. Your peace is the prize. Don't let nobody steal it from you. She done been through it and she came out the other side stronger and wiser. And that's a beautiful thing to see, y'all. She didn't just reclaim a house, she reclaimed herself. If this story gave you something to think about, go ahead and subscribe and hit that thumbs up for Shonda's strength. Let me know in the comments which city or state y'all watching from. And right now on the screen, you're gonna see other videos from the channel. Click one and let's keep going.